A lot of them, specifically our Black boys, are struggling with their identity and
Mhm.
their relationship with masculinity. And there's a generational gap that I think we should pay more attention to between our current teens and how they navigate life versus their parents' expectations.
Mm,
So that's causing a lot of confusion and
mhm.
anxiety.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Learning for Truth and Love. Today I'm thrilled to have our guest, Miss Tewanda Hardy, today with us. Um, Tawanda Hardy, I am so excited to have this conversation with you because I was just really excited to see the work you're doing. She works counseling Black boys and teenage boys. So I'm really excited about the insights you're going to provide to our guests. I really think that society needs the type of advice that you have to offer. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I want to start before we even get into that. Tell us who you are, who you are, and your background. Go ahead
Yes.
before we get started.
So the first thing that came to mind when you asked who I am, I'm very pleased with my initial response. I am a woman that's evolving and on a mission. So that's who I am currently. Now, let me tell you how I got here, and I'll make it as quick as possible. I started out raised in the South, very low income home, and I was raised with high expectations: get a degree, get a good job, buy a house, get married, get a car. So I would say for the first 30 years of my life, that ruled me. I went to school, I graduated with honors all throughout my educational career. I got my bachelor's, I got my master's, and then I entered into the workforce. One thing about social work is what you read in a book and what you study in a classroom does not always transfer over to real life crisis.
Mhm.
So I was thrown in the workforce, eager, gullible, ready to change the world. And I faced some things that I wasn't prepared to face.
Mhm.
But I learned a lot over my 20 years, and I learned a lot from the families, I learned a lot from the systems that I worked in, and along the way, life happened. I had my own traumas with my own personal issues and my family traumas that caused me to leave the workforce and stop working for the systems that I was working for. And I decided to go independent. And for the last 3 years, I've been independent. And here I am today. As I evolve on my journey, and I've done the work to go inward to find the person I lost when I entered the workforce. I lost a little part of myself, and I'm uncovering the girl that existed when I was in my own adolescence.
Wow. My gosh.
Yes. Um, that adolescent
Yeah.
transition is so important.
Mhm. Wow.
And that's why I chose to work with that particular population. That transition is huge,
Mhm.
and there's not a lot of resources specifically for our Black youth that helping them navigate that transition in modern day. And I wanted to be one of those resources for our Black youth. So
Yeah.
here I am now, specializing in work with our young people.
Wow.
In a nutshell.
Oh my gosh, where do I begin here? First of all, I do have to say one of the things I'm so excited about is I'm so drawn to people who are doing the practical work, and doing it effectively and really providing insights. And many of us are on journeys where a lot of times they parallel our experience, right? Sometimes they're more evident, like they are to you and they are to me. They're usually evident which pieces you're trying to pick up, and making sure others don't have a similar experience, right?
Yes.
But oh my goodness, which one do I talk about? So, before I even get to the boys, I am so curious. So you made this comment about you made two comments about losing a little part of you when you enter the workforce. You don't have to share as what you can share as much depth as you want, but I
Yeah,
couldn't help but wonder because I
yeah.
understand.
So I'm an open book. There's very little that I keep to myself. I'm truly an open book. The
Mhm.
parts of myself that I lost to enter into the workforce and become a professional, a lot of adults don't talk about.
Mhm.
Becoming a professional, becoming a wife, becoming a mom, it requires you to sacrifice certain parts of yourself.
Mhm.
But for me in particular, I lost a very huge part of myself when I entered into corporate America,
Mm.
right? My morals and my values about human worth and human connection wasn't always supported when I worked in corporate America.
Mhm.
I saw the glass ceiling and I don't know, I'm just gonna go for it, right? I'm just gonna speak my truth and hopefully I don't make too many people uncomfortable. But I did notice
Okay.
a glass ceiling in certain spaces
Mhm.
in the clinical realm and the government. And when it comes to providing support for oppressed and marginalized people,
Mhm.
there's a glass ceiling.
Mhm.
And that glass ceiling required me to mute morals and values around human worth and human connection for longer than I should have, to the point where it started to weigh on my own mental well-being.
Mhm.
I'll just leave that there. So yes, I lost parts of myself. I had to overlook certain things. I had to prioritize notes and time spent in court over authentic conversations,
Mhm.
over meeting people where they are,
Mhm.
over people's well-being, right? So that's what I mean. I lost a part of my desire to prioritize human worth and human connection because I had a job to do. Yeah.
Right. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. And I know
Yeah.
you and I had this discussion about values and worth, but I find myself on a very similar journey because, when you are in academia, one of the things sometimes you have to choose from is whether or not you're going to focus on the practical work or pursue the titles, right?
Yes.
And oftentimes we value our worth based on those titles.
Yes.
And so
Yep.
that's kind of where I am in even thinking about, what it is I want to accomplish. So I completely understand. Completely.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So my mental well-being
Uh-huh.
couldn't continue to operate the way I was operating, prioritizing the things that I was prioritizing, and I had a full mental breakdown,
Mm.
often known as a midlife crisis,
Mhm.
but I've learned to identify it as a great awakening more than a
Mhm.
crisis.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I prioritize different things now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to say a midlife crisis before you got to midlife, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Because
Yeah, but the
you're younger than I am, so it's
well, I'm
I know we
mid-40s.
talked about it, yeah.
Yes, yeah, yes. But it was a lot of compound weight that
Uh-huh.
just got too heavy. Yeah,
Completely understand. Wow.
yes.
So, and I just love talking about the bridge between what we read about and study versus the reality. Tell us, how did you so coming from there and coming from working in systems to wanting to do what's practical, right? Talk about your transition and what you did next to lead you where you are.
So over the 20 years, I worked with youth in a lot of different, environments. I've worked with foster care youth, aging out of foster care. I've worked with military youth. I've worked with detained youth in a lot juvenile facility. Over the 20 years, I recognized patterns, right? The youth that I work with suffered with low confidence. They suffered with weak resilience skills. the smallest little thing would trigger them or set
Mhm.
them off. And they also struggle with finding out who they are and where they belong, which is normal for
Mhm.
adolescents. That part is
Right.
normal. And over my time and my experience, I recognized that a lot of the crisis that the youth I work with was preventable,
Mhm.
right? With these
Mhm.
practical skills.
Mhm.
So I did the crisis work. I calmed down the trauma. I worked with them through those high intense moments, but I wanted to step on the other side to see if we could prevent certain behaviors from happening
Mhm.
with these practical skills and tools. So that's what I focus on now is
Mhm.
preventative work. Still bump heads with the crisis and the trauma from time
Mhm.
to time, but the main focus of my service is preventative. Let's boost confidence. Let's
Mhm.
teach them resilience and how to navigate the ups and downs of life. And let's
Mhm.
give them a space to figure out who they are as they're becoming and teach them the skills to have healthy connection. So that's what
Wow.
I do on the preventative side.
Wow, that's amazing. And I know we're dying to know what those skills are and how to do so. But I'm
Yeah.
so curious, going back to what you said, I was like, I can't stop writing notes here. So you talked about, working with foster care, military detained youths, and there were some patterns. And that some of the patterns related to things that are preventable. What are some example of those you mentioned skills and
Yes.
low confidence and weak resilience. I'm so curious about if you can expand a little bit more on them because I'm curious about them from so many different angles.
Yes.
What they are, what their sources are.
Yes. Yes. There are increasing rates of youth suicide,
Mhm.
youth self-harming, feelings of depression and isolation, right?
Mhm.
Social anxiety. The numbers keep going up.
Yeah.
They're going up. As our clinical tools improve and advance, these numbers shouldn't be going up,
Mhm.
right? So again, the practical skills, in my opinion, we have to prioritize the practical skills. We got to try something we haven't always tried,
Right,
right?
which is
Because these numbers as we advance as a profession, and this is across the board, not just for our youth, rates
Mhm.
of depression, rates of suicide, rates of
Mhm.
self-harming, rates of social anxiety, rates of feelings of isolation are increasing.
Mhm.
So I think it's important for us to step back and look at those comparisons and say, what are we missing?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. It's interesting you said that because even though I mean my work is preparing educators. And more as I do this work, I find myself going into the psychology end of things
Hmm.
just to really figure out how do you empower, right? It's like instead of me dealing with this tiny issue, what is the bottom line?
Yes.
And I've started more and more doing things to deal with the bottom line. And when you deal with the bottom line, it's powerful, but not everybody knows how to address those bottom lines constructively. What do you find are some of the reasons that the rates are going up? Like, what have you come across?
And I'm comfortable with silence, Catherine. I hope you are too. Sometimes I have to take a minute to go inward.
Mhm.
And this is one of those moments because I could respond to that question in a lot of different ways from the
I could
food we're
imagine.
eating to the power of the media. So I could respond to that question in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
This is what I gathered from my teen group, right? So I let my teen group know I was going to be on a podcast. And entering this podcast, I wanted their voices to be heard over mine. So I spoke with them about a few things, and we actually talked about why do our teens feel so sad and isolated? And a lot of them struggle with the comparison culture,
Mm,
right? Seeing perfection represented on social media, but not reflected in the mirror when they
mm,
wake up, look at themselves. A lot of them, specifically our Black boys, are struggling with their identity and
mhm,
their relationship with masculinity.
mm.
And there's a generational gap that I think we should pay more attention to between our current teens and how they navigate life versus their parents' expectations.
Mm,
So that's causing a lot of confusion and
mhm,
anxiety. And those are the 3 that stood out the most. The comparison culture, I have one more that just popped in mind. The comparison culture, they're finding their identity, which is normal,
mhm,
but what's not normal, what I have noticed more in the last few years than I did versus my first few years in social work, are Black teens are struggling with their relationship with their own masculinity.
mm,
And here's another thing that came up. They're afraid to speak their truth
mhm,
because they don't wanna offend anyone. People are so sensitive to
mhm,
perspectives that are different from their own.
mhm,
I'm afraid we've gotten to the point where people are afraid to disagree.
mhm.
So those are just a few examples of things spoken directly from the youth groups that I work with that they're struggling with, right? Yeah.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Where do we begin with this? I mean, the comparison culture is something that I've observed and understood because, in some ways I can identify, we can identify with it. I can identify with it.
Absolutely.
And really the struggle to really make sure and I should say I separate myself from what it is, whatever is being portrayed as what
Yeah.
we should be.
Yeah.
Boy, we see it so
Yeah.
visually everywhere.
Yes.
Um, the negative impact of that, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is also one of the reasons it's led me to focus on Black representation, right? Because the
Mm.
depths of understanding that it's not about just, and people don't really get it's not just about, the surface things that sometimes we talk about. There's a depth to that.
Yes.
It's interesting you said that because one of the things I do and I've intentionally done, I finally found, a church that we've been frequenting, right? Because I've been exploring and going to different ones. And one of the things that drew me to this is you have quite a few elderly members and men who and also women, which I was really happy about. There were women involved. But the elderly men there were vulnerable with their stories. They were ministers, they would talk about it in a way that my son can learn from their experiences.
Mm.
That was so rare. I mean, I tell you, going church hopping, that is so rare, for that culture to be, as in touch with the things that might have caused them shame and how they changed.
Yes. 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 There's a lot of healing potential in
Mhm.
those intergenerational conversations.
Mm.
And that's one of the things that the teen themselves mentioned. They feel so disconnected from their parents
Mhm.
because the way their parents learn to navigate in our society is different from their current navigation in modern day society.
Mhm.
And if we could just talk to each other, a lot could happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, I am comfortable with silence, by the way. Take as much silence as we need.
No, I'm good. My brain is racing like all of the information. So you said shame, and it
Mhm.
automatically connected me to one of my
Uh-huh.
heroes, which is Brene Brown.
Yep.
I'm currently reading Atlas of the Heart, and
Mhm.
she's diving into shame and regret and envy and jealousy.
Mhm.
And these words don't get enough attention, but
Mm-mm.
they are at the root of a lot of our suffering.
Mhm.
And we don't talk about it. We don't talk about
Mm-mm.
being jealous and regret and shame and bouncing back from failures and mistake
Mhm.
and feelings of rejection and not fitting in and not feeling
Mhm.
good enough.
Right.
We don't give these words and these transitions enough of the spotlight.
Right. And it's funny, initially I didn't wanna say, but that's exactly what I talk to my students about, because I really feel like it's really important to understand what that is and what those depths are. I think it's really important for connecting. I think
Yes.
it's hard to connect without quite understanding, shame's effect.
Yes. Yep.
It's hard to be vulnerable without understanding shame's effect. Uh,
Yeah.
and I've seen it. I've seen it, and I remember, one day I felt I had to choose between, do I give this student a book? Do I tell her to read The Power of Vulnerability or some of the things that I assigned?
Ah,
And I just said, you know what? Why don't you should go ahead and read that book, because
yeah.
and it had a desired effect. She came back and said, my gosh, if I wasn't so defensive the whole semester, I would have learned so much. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, what other transformation do you need? I mean, that's the transformation that will take them through a long part of their career, compared to me giving her the content I wanted her.
Memorized information, and you and
Mhm.
I talked about that once before. It's one thing to memorize information, but again, from Atlas of the Heart that I'm currently reading, um, the information that soaks in is connected to emotion.
Mhm.
So it's one thing for my brain to memorize information, and it's another thing for my spirit to receive the information that will stay with me forever.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. This is these type of conversations give me life and fill me with energy, and this is my passion, to have these conversations and to normalize the human experience.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to go in so many directions with this, but something you said resonates with something I've discovered. Part of my work, I did a paper. I created an instrument to look at self efficacy indicators that not only combined identity but family. The second part of this work, I collected a larger set of data, which I still have to look at. To keep telling myself, I know I've mentioned it before. But one of the things that came up there, even in interviewing students and even in working with students, was the parental expectation. I'm so curious as to, how can you help us understand this generation gap? Because I see it, by the way, not only, I see it in not only in black families, but also I see it in other families, in white families. Tell us a little bit about that. You mentioned the
Yeah, that
generation gap,
generational
parental
gap. Yeah.
expectation, and yeah, and how that affects identity. I was trying to read my handwriting. I scribbled.
So this is a loose quote directly from a 16-year-old African American male that lives in Detroit, Michigan, that I work with. He requests, because they have insight, they have say over what we discuss in group. And his request was, can we talk about the post traumatic slave impact on our parents
Mm,
and how they pass that mentality down to us in their parenting?
mm,
So he feels that his mom, whose background was very similar to mine, have expectations and priorities that are different from his, right? His mom came from humble beginnings and she was raised to prioritize education, money, stable salaries, big houses. Not only just reaching success was not enough, but your lifestyle had to represent that success, right? But he's existing in a world of human connection matters more,
mhm,
purpose matters more,
mhm,
fulfillment matters more. And if that doesn't equate to a degree or a title or a corporate letter being climbed, he's okay with that.
mhm,
So they're gonna clash.
mm,
Success versus fulfillment, I would
uh-huh,
say. He's in a point in his life where he's chasing belonging.
mhm,
He's chasing meaning. He's chasing something deeper
mhm,
than just a degree, a
mhm.
title, a corporate ladder, external things.
Wow.
Yeah, yes. So that has a lot to do with that generational gap.
Mhm.
the human experience shift from generation to generation. We prioritize different things, right? Coming out of slavery, right?
Mhm.
As a group of Black people, we prioritized things different than what our youth today are struggling with in the face of social media and all the things that come along with that. So
Mhm.
there's a gap between what they prioritize and how they identify success. I'll wrap it up with that.
Right.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
My gosh. I'm so glad you said that. I mean, it aligns exactly with what I've observed. One of the really fascinating thing about even me having this podcast, I never thought it would be a challenge to actually get folks like us to talk about certain things. What I've certainly is or even to bring themselves to the table. I see so much how our generation, our institution identity
Mhm.
is so strong. Our
Yes.
institution identity has been used to protect us. And I don't think it's just us. I don't think it's just Black folks. I think I see it with what I'm observing in society right now. You know, a lot of the effects of crumbling and the way that
Mhm.
crumbling is in fact affecting us. Now, for me, that crumbling happened a long time ago that I've had to deal with and wrestle with because um I felt like I had to really choose what I wanted to value, and
Yeah.
based on what I chose to value, I had to let go of some of that institution identity
Yeah.
because there just was a clash between what I valued as an institution, right? And where I thought this institution and identity hampered my values. I mean, I know that, you know, I'm speaking more from an academic level, but when I think of institution identity, I think of systems.
Yes.
Right? Systems
Yes.
we've created, systems that have protected us. Some of it of which is backfiring right now, unfortunately, because they weren't as tenable as we thought, right? But maybe building some type of infrastructure with some flexibility without it crumbling is perhaps what we need.
Mhm. Mhm. And how do we head in that direction? And oh God, this my inner authentic self is yelling at me to say the things that I'm working very hard to mute. You say our institutional selves are protecting us, but I can't help but feel they're also controlling us. Let's
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. And I
100, 200%.
yeah,
Please say
so
it.
that
Don't mute that authentic self.
okay. I
That's
know
my goal.
this perspective that I have come to grow inside of myself is not welcomed in all spaces. So
It's not. It's welcome there in this podcast, though,
okay.
because
Okay.
that's the goal. That's the goal to talk about those things.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
The things we
Yes.
don't see that are controlling us. That's the scary part, you know?
Yes.
But we don't see it, but I see it as a fear. I don't know how
Uh-huh.
people may see it differently. Go ahead. Sorry.
Mhm.
We can talk. Go ahead.
Yes. You just hit the nail on the head. So, a big part of the foundation of the services that I provide to the youth I work with is confidence, resilience, critical thinking, and
Mm,
belonging. And let me tell you, that critical thinking component gets me in a lot of trouble.
mm,
A lot of adults aren't ready to evaluate their beliefs
mhm. Nope.
that they decided to believe in when they were 5 years old and now they're 40 plus and
Mhm,
they haven't reexamined these beliefs in all this time, and
mhm.
it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. So that critical thinking component gets me in some uncomfortable situations
Huh.
because everybody is not ready to examine beliefs and systems that we believed and existed in for so long.
Now,
Yeah.
why do you think that is? Because I have a perspective about it. I'm so curious because I have a reason I think. I'm just curious from your perspective.
Yeah, my perspective, and this is based upon my own 43 years of life. This is personal. This is Tewanda, the woman speaking, not Tewanda, the social worker, right?
Okay.
My own experience has shown me that comfort feels good and it's a very hard bubble to navigate out of,
Mhm.
especially when you've sacrificed and put so much hard work into building it.
Mm.
Comfort is a stronghold.
Mhm.
And I would rather be in this bubble of comfort with unquestioned beliefs and systems that I side eye, but
Mhm.
it's comfortable. I know
Mhm.
what to expect. I have a level of expectation and control in this
Mhm.
comfort bubble.
Yeah.
Discomfort it requires you to be a different self.
Mhm.
And most of us would rather just stay comfortable. So
Yeah.
that's my personal experience with questioning beliefs and systems that coexist
Right.
with. Yeah. What do you think?
So it's comfortable because it's safe. It hasn't harmed us yet, right? And most
That's
people's
the
perspective.
question.
What? Well,
It hasn't harmed us? I don't know.
harm, you don't see the harm. That's the thing. That's why you don't think it's harmed you yet. Now, those who are able to see the harm are able to foresee
Yes.
that others don't see the harm. But the harm
Yes.
is right there. It's right around the corner.
Yeah.
It's coming, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But my thinking was also one of the reasons we're not ready to look at them is what are you going to replace it with? I think that's a lot of the issue. A lot of the issue is, yeah, I'm breaking this down, but what am I going to replace it with? Because when you break something down that's been your foundation, right?
Yes.
That's made you feel, like you're in control, make you feel like you belong, then it's almost like it leaves the shame naked,
Yeah.
right? That I've done all this building
Yep.
and for what?
Yeah.
And so, unless you're replacing if it's something, I see it all the time, and I see it all the time. It's also one of the reasons I've also changed the way I teach. I mean, I see it all the time, even with peers. But I know, speaking from the classroom perspective, I've changed the way I teach, and it really helping people to understand how they think. Now, what ended up happening was because of our background, right? As people who, we've been enslaved, that's our heritage. We have a lot of strong beliefs. And what I started seeing was when it came to students, when it was writing paper and stuff like, wow, these are all a lot of beliefs, these are a lot of opinions. But when we were in academy, we were asked to talk about what the evidence is, right?
Mhm.
So even if I don't agree, even if I agree with you, I will ask the so what. So I really started me to really changing the way I focus, and how I even have conversations with students. Like you're asking that research question, like so what, right? Where's the evidence? Is that really
Yes.
evidence of this, or is that evidence of something else? Yeah, you believe that. You want to show that you believe that, but that's not a question you're asking.
Yeah.
Most people don't really see the disconnect.
Yeah.
So I talk about questions. You
Yeah.
know, is that a question? I treat it like like science,
Mhm.
right? What is that variable we're talking about? And I'm talking about an education social science class where we're looking at
Yes.
historical stuff, and see that a lot of views keep us safe. Let me give you an example.
Yes.
I have I remember there are two conversations. This is interesting, and I'm thinking about it. There are two conversations I've had. One with a black parent and one with a white parent. Right? The black parent made this comment to me a while back, uh, because we were talking about our boys, and we were talking about our boys, and then I started to realize, oh, she thinks I'm doing certain things to control versus empower, right?
Uh-huh.
And then she said, and I started questioning afterwards, and then she told me X, Y, Z what she did because she thought I was doing and thinking away. I was like, it's like, yeah, oh wow, I see why. Because we think we're talking about the same thing because we
Sure.
have these high expectations.
Yeah.
But one is one is letting him be, right? And exploring. The other one is it has to be that one way.
Mm.
I've seen it with my white friend too. At one point, I thought we were talking about the same thing. And then it hit me when I observed her, right? Whereas I would allow my boy to just, let's just say, I allow him to make his mistakes, right? Like, I'm not gonna be the parent who I was never the parent who I have to cut your meat every time, maybe you can
Yes.
learn how to
Yep.
cut it up too,
Yes.
kind of
Yep.
thing. And then I realized that's where a disconnect is. I can't give people advice on this at all. And I stopped. I was like, yeah, I can't give advice because what I think I'm giving good advice, not realizing the person is coming from a place of controlling the behavior versus empowering, you
Very
know?
interesting.
And I started realizing, yeah, I'm not, I'm probably like giving really bad advice.
Very interesting. So I recognize when you noticed the disconnect with the black parent. When did you notice the disconnect when you were speaking to the white parent?
When she tried to implement what I suggested,
Mhm.
then I realized she was doing it in a way to control the behavior versus,
Teaching a
yeah,
skill. Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Very interesting. Very interesting. So the big question is, how do we head in that direction? Right? How do we make it safe to examine beliefs and systems that have kept us safe and made us comfortable with no foundation of what will replace it? How do we head in that direction?
So I'm going to put that question back on you.
So here
What do you do? Go ahead.
yesterday, so my daughter has a limited amount of screen time. That's one of
Hmm.
our rules in our house. We entertain ourselves with our screens, but then we are required to entertain ourselves without screens.
Hmm.
And yesterday, she was required to entertain herself without a screen for it's time to be bored. You
Hmm.
need to be bored
Yep.
because boredom activates something in the brain that would not get moving if you weren't bored. So here's
Absolutely.
my thought around it. What if the thing that could replace it won't get created until the need for it to be replaced exists? And what I mean by that is boredom.
Hmm.
My daughter whined and complained before she
Hmm.
came in her room for her board time, but she got in here and she started drawing. She has a
Hmm.
book that she's working on. She surpassed 30 minutes. So
Hmm.
she got in here and found a way to entertain herself
Hmm.
for longer than what was expected. She would not have come up with those activities if she didn't have to.
Right.
So what if the need needed to exist before the solution
Hmm.
could be formed?
Right. Absolutely. I'm 100% for that. Been there,
Mhm.
allowing him to be bored. And so, yes, you're right. They find other things to do. I do have to confess, I fall off the bandwagon for a lot of that. Now we're in the teenage years.
Yes, yes.
Now, what happens?
Yes, but I'm circling that back to the bigger question,
Hmm.
right? So the bigger question was, why is it so hard for people to question their beliefs in the systems that we exist in?
Hmm.
And the conclusion was because it's comfortable, because we feel safe, and there's nothing to replace it.
Hmm.
So I'm
Yeah.
circling that boredom example back to the bigger question.
Hmm.
What if the solution can exist until the void is there?
Wow.
Boredom required her to create something that she would not have created if she wasn't forced to be bored,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So, what if this solution requires us to first be uncomfortable before it could present itself?
Right. But then also there is access, right? Because your daughter, I'm sure, like me, you've given her opportunities for other things to do, right? Mine has taken drawing lessons, mine takes
Yeah.
music lessons. So there are options for there's access as well. And there
Hmm.
are times when I've given my son, a blank book and say, and we had this conversation over and over again, I'm bored. Figure it
Yes.
out,
Yes.
but there's some access there. I mean, what do you do? I mean, we're talking about having a void. I
Mhm.
imagine that there's a healthy way to have a void, and then there's a unhealthy way to have a void, right? What do you fill that void with? What if there's nothing there that you think can fill the void with? Now, growing up, even if it seems like there's nothing, there is something, right? Because you're
Yeah.
also trained to do other things, right? You help wash dishes, you help
Yeah.
with,
Yep.
with
Yep.
different things. You sit down and watch the sky if you have to.
Yeah.
But we often today feel like there is nothing to do, even if previously you could pick 100 things.
Yes.
So, what do you do when you have that void?
Fill that void? That's a very good question. And the void could definitely go one of 2 ways. It could definitely be filled with unhealthy things. It could, or it could be healthy. So that's a good point. What do you do to fill the void? Is that a personal question for me, or is that just like a general question?
That's a general question. Just thinking back on, you know, we're thinking of, teenage boys, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
their struggles with identity.
Yes.
We're talking about the generation gap. So the question
Yes.
is, what are some practical skills and tools, right? How do we boost confidence? What do we do to help them?
Give them space to reflect, to talk things through,
Mm,
even if they don't have it all figured out yet,
hmm.
and to be confused. Give them
To be
space to
what?
be confused. To be
Okay.
confused, right? And allowing not knowing to be okay.
Mm,
Yes.
okay.
The void that they are feeling because of the comparison culture, because of the generational gap, because of the feelings of isolation, a lot of that void gets addressed when they're in a group with their peers and they recognize, oh, it's not just me.
Mm,
It's validated. Validation from their peers go a long way. Space to reflect. Our
hmm.
boys have emotions and they want to express these emotions. We recently just talked about this, how the image of the black male is represented and how sometimes that's an image that's hard for them to live up to
Hmm.
because their hearts are getting broken. They're
Hmm.
jumping in and out of relationships, their hearts are being broken, but who do they admit this to, right?
Right.
So giving them the space to be vulnerable
Mm,
and to reflect
hmm.
and see validation from peers and to recognize that I made a mistake, but I'm not a mistake.
Mm,
And just normalizing the human experience, reflecting on it, learning
hmm.
from it, and taking the lesson to move towards your better self. That's
Mm,
how we fill the void in the time that I spend with them.
okay. Now, and the
Yes.
time you spend with them is an opportunity to be validated by peers. That's a healthy, safe
Yes.
space, right? Well, when
Yes.
your peer is not alone, that may not necessarily be happening, right? Because sometimes peers manipulate each other, and
Yes.
because you're in the same shame, what
Yeah.
you want to do is see, you say misery love company. You want to see how low the other one can go, so we can feel better about. We can feel, oftentimes,
Yes.
unfortunately, we feel validated when somebody goes lower than we do,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
And sometimes we don't realize what others see as an opportunity is really not helpful. And this is something interesting. You mentioned this before when you talk about institution possibly harming us. Sometimes that quote unquote opportunity is really, in the end, not something beneficial. It's masquerading as opportunity, right? It's masquerading as something good for us, but doesn't
Mhm.
really benefit us in the end
Mhm.
because it's a means to the end, a means to an end for somebody else,
That's
right?
true.
To
That's
accomplish
true.
their goals.
Yes. Yes. Very true. And that's where the good clinical facilitation kicks in,
Mhm.
right? To create environments where we can help them form healthy connections, right? We can help them belong in spaces where it's safe to be vulnerable, and you're able to get different perspectives on how to navigate things
Mhm.
versus being in a group of peers who may be trying to cause you harm and there's no one there to help you look at it from a different angle. That's where the beauty of that facilitation kicks in. Yes.
Now, do you also help parents how to think about this? Because practicality of, I'm so curious, and especially, as a parent who we do this and make this decision because my husband and I, we have these conversations, right? And so we kind of see, I guess, what's the word? The blowback. We see what happens when we implement this. And we have to
Mhm.
be prepared for the disagreement, right? Whatever form it comes in.
Mhm.
But then in the end, I see the benefit where it allows us to connect and he's calm and he realize, there's a realization and we get to talk, we will play a game. And the truth is, let me just be honest here.
Mhm.
I make sure that in the past, especially, I've really limited the screen time. Now I've been flexible for two reasons. One is, I guess the scientist in me, see how far he's willing to go and how it affects him. And then I can say, oh, that's affecting you.
Uh-huh.
Right? Because you
Yep.
don't really have the time to reflect and you don't have the time. Because I feel like this is a time to train to understand what addiction is. This is a time to train
Yeah.
to a safe space to understand what's happening to you.
Yes.
Well, this is how I think about it. And I could be
Yes,
completely wrong
yes.
because, sometimes it's, more exposure, the, addiction, certain things get worse. But I feel like it's a safe space for you to understand what's happening to you. So I let him, I've done it where and I felt good about it in the past, but then more and more and every day and every it gets worse. And I let him know, I give him a lot of warnings, let him know, yeah, at some point, I'm gonna let you quit cold turkey because, we have
Mm.
to build something constructive. You're becoming an adult and now we have to figure out how to put aside something we really want to do. So we're kind of sorted there in terms of we did have that none of this. But then there are times when, let's just say we have to make the time.
Yes.
We have to make the time, and I have to make the
Yes.
time, and that's something I've been thinking about a lot. Where do I find the time? I have to make big
Yes.
decisions, which may be career decisions. So to make sure I have the
Mhm.
time, right? So how do you work with parents to help them understand?
Do not work with the parents as often as I would like. The parents are less available than the teens, right? Like
Physically or
they
emotionally? Sorry.
listen, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
Whole nother conversation.
Mhm.
One thing I can say about the parents who trust me with their teens, they recognize the need to
Mhm.
have certain conversations, even if they're not ready to have them yet themselves.
Mm.
So I can
Mhm.
appreciate that, right?
Yeah. Nice.
But at the end of every session, whether it be a private session or a group session, at the end of every session, I send a recap to the parents and I give them a conversation starter. This is beyond just this 60 or 90
Mm.
minutes that they're spending with me.
Nice.
I make an effort to incorporate the parents in between the time that we meet. So I'll
Mhm.
send them a recap. This is what we talked about. For example, this week we just talked about fitting in versus belonging. And this is what we talked about. Keep the conversation going. Ask your young person who's the person in their life that they feel they can show their most authentic selves to. Like
Mhm.
keep the conversation going.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I incorporate the parents a little, not as much as I wish I could.
Mhm.
You just planted a seed, but I do my best to keep them engaged beyond just the 90 minutes that they're with me.
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you're doing. I mean, I've had students who, and black students who, a different occasion, they'll say, yeah, when I was in school, my white peers used to get this type of help and they would get pulled out or they would, but I realized, it never happened for me. And, like it was normal to see the white peers get that type of help. And I think it's great that more of our black parents and black kids are, because I mean I've even if it's just helping you build awareness of who you are.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I've recognized, and I got my son just to, just have give him somebody to talk to and help build awareness.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It does take time though. And I'm guilty. I do this work for a living. I have a 10-year-old daughter. And some nights I cringe,
Mhm.
full transparency. I
I am.
cringe by how little time I spent with my own daughter, and it's making me emotional just thinking about it. Time, prioritizing that time
Mhm.
is important, right? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard. We're balancing a lot. It's hard, but it's necessary. Yeah.
Same here. Same here. Because you're doing this work. At the end of the day, you're tired.
Yes.
And that's pretty much what has happened.
Yeah.
Left him to his devices, and of course, what does he do? Now, the other concerning thing, though, is it's not just what does he do. I see how actively folks are actively engaging and manipulating our kids
Mm,
so that they want to revisit some of these whatever game sites. And I saw it the other day, and he had it on. I was like, "Up, see, he's manipulating you. He wants you guys to get him as much viewership by encouraging you to like the person was making a comment about, "Hey, look, if I reach, 400,
many.
I was,
Yeah.
or whatever it was." I was like,
Yep.
"Oh my gosh." That's a little
Yes.
bit more obvious that he's really reeling these kids in.
Yes.
That part scares me a little bit, and that's also why my goal, he's gonna quit that whole I've already
Cold turkey.
I've already limited 1, and now some of these, YouTube videos. And mostly, because I wanna deal with what happens when you quit, right? What happens when, you know what happened? What's happening? What's happening with your identity,
Yeah.
when you attach yourself to something that's not real?
Mm,
What are you replacing it with?
Catherine, that could be a whole lot deeper than just video games. What happens when you build your identity on something that's not real?
Mm,
I think I'm gonna make a workshop out of that to discuss it with my teams because that was a deep one, and it goes
wow.
deeper than just video games.
Mm,
Like I said earlier, the young Black boys that I currently work with, a few of them are struggling with their identity, their
mhm,
sexual identity, what it means to be masculine versus feminine.
mm,
And that circles back to what you just said about what happens when you build your identity on something that's not real.
wow.
Our boys are struggling with their sexual identity in a way that why am I the only one bothered? I don't know, but our boys are struggling at a great rate with their sexual identity and finding the balance between their masculine energy and their feminine energy. Yes.
Can you what does that mean?
Boy. Okay.
I'm trying to figure out how to think about that.
So, specific example, right? I have a 16-year-old male that I am currently working with. He requests to take hormones to stop his masculine. He requests to take a med. He requests of his parents to take a medication to stunt his hormonal growth, right? He's struggling with his identity and what it means to be a male, right? He has an image of what masculinity means and how it should look according to him and the males that surround him, his uncle, his dad. His identity is separate from that, and it's causing him to not want to embrace the masculine side of himself at all,
Mhm.
and to allow his feminine energy to be the leading role in his identity.
Why do you think that's separate? Does it come from lack of spending time? Is there something else that we don't understand? Like, what do we need to understand as a society?
Boy, Catherine, I have so much internal turmoil right now because I'm not sure what is safe to I'll just
Just
be
say it
transparent
generally
with
without specifics. What does society need to understand?
the media has huge impact on how we identify and how we choose to navigate through life. There has in if we study history of the media, we recognize the impact that media has on a society,
Okay.
right? Over the last several years, there has been an increase of Black men in dresses in the media. There has been an increase of the media has a lot of control.
Okay, so let's just go with that. Let's run with that. Because that was
Yes,
supposed to be comedy, right? That was supposed to be funny. I imagine that wasn't supposed to be something we identify with, right? But you're saying it has an effect.
absolutely.
So what happened here, and what are we missing in the way we're thinking about, about this?
It was supposed to be comedy. It was supposed to be entertainment. How does the brain determine what's real and what's fake?
Because how does the brain determine what's real and what's fake,
Mhm.
especially when you're a little kid,
And you see it over and over again.
right? And you're viewing it without necessarily having someone next to you to explain that this is what's going on.
Mhm. And it's
Mm.
showing up everywhere. It's no longer just in the comedies, it's showing up across the board now.
So what does that mean? Does that mean the media's impact is does that mean the media's impact is greater than those around us? Does that mean we're spending too much time because we're watching TV? Look, I love I
Again, that's a whole nother conversation. It's possible for a group of teens to
Mhm,
be in the room with each other
mm,
and not speak a single word to each other and spend more time on their device.
right,
So that's a hard question to answer. Does that mean the media has more power over our environment and the people we're spending time with? Because it's possible to be in an environment where you're always surrounded by people, but everybody's like this.
right. And our brain are taking in all the images, right? It's going somewhere, getting stored up and changed in whatever form that I guess we're not really aware of, right?
Yeah. So yes, the media does. Is it more powerful? I don't have a opinion on that, but is it powerful? Absolutely.
I feel like we need to have another conversation about this. We do need to continue this conversation. I think, I'm going to wrap up just because, oh
Yes.
my gosh, there's so much to talk about. What advice do you want what advice do you want to leave us with now? And what do we need? I keep forgetting to sometimes ask that question. What do we need? And what advice do you want to leave us with?
What my teens express to me as far as what they need, safe spaces to feel seen and receive support as they navigate their becoming. Safe spaces to feel seen. Feeling seen, my God, is such a powerful thing.
We can have a whole conversation about that.
And receiving support as they figure out who they are and who they want to be.
Hmm.
That's what we need. My advice, powerful things aren't required to be complicated. Simplicity goes a long way.
Hmm. Right.
Let's get back to simple.
Wow. And simple is the hardest thing, isn't it? I mean, simple
Very.
is, do I want to talk to you right now? Right? Do I even want to talk?
Yep.
And
Yep.
if I talk to you, will what I say benefit you or
Mm.
is it for me,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
You've given us a lot to think about, and I know this will not be the last time you and I talk about this because I feel like every bullet I wrote down here can we could talk about each bullet for like an hour. Wow.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining. I know that this conversation can go in so many directions and it can go on. Thank you.
Truly my pleasure.
So, if you like this episode, please like and subscribe so that you can be alerted for the next episode. Thank you for joining Learning for Truth and Love.